Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into something absolutely fascinating, the Pyramid Mysterious. We're talking about structures that have literally captivated us for millennia. And the crazy thing is, despite decades of modern research, there are startling new discoveries coming to light that are forcing us to rethink pretty much everything we thought we knew.
So, I want you to imagine something for a second. What if the world's greatest tomb wasn't actually a tomb at all? I know, it sounds a bit like science fiction, right? But as we peel back the layers of history, architecture, and even esoteric traditions today, this is going to become the core of our investigation. To really grasp the true purpose of these ancient megaliths, we actually have to go way back to a time before the sand, to the very birth of the civilization that built them.
You see, roughly 6,000 years ago, just a tiny shift in the Earth's axis caused a massive climate catastrophe. The Sahara, which used to be this lush, green landscape full of lakes, rapidly turned into a deadly desert. So, driven by pure survival, these nomadic tribes were forced to migrate east until they hit an absolute miracle, the Nile River. Now, the Nile wasn't just for drinking. Every single year, it flooded and left behind this incredibly rich black soil. These desperate nomads realized that if they could just figure out how to control that water, they wouldn't have to wander anymore. So they dug canals, they built mud walls, and they essentially birthed agriculture. In the process, they became the world's first engineers. Now, here's the thing. They didn't just wake up one day and construct the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was a really rapid progression of trial, error, and architectural evolution. It all kicked off with an engineering genius named Imhotep, who built the Step Pyramid, basically the world's first artificial mountain. Decades later, they tried for a smooth-sided structure at a really steep 54-degree angle, and well, it was a massive engineering failure. The weight was just too much, and it buckled into what we now call the bent pyramid. But they learned from it. They adjusted their math, successfully built the perfectly smooth red pyramid, and that paved the exact way for Pharaoh Khufu's ultimate masterpiece. Which brings us to the big question. How on earth did they actually pull off Khufu's masterpiece? Well, mainstream archaeology has a pretty incredible explanation, especially when you remember they didn't have iron tools or even the wheel. First, they mined limestone locally, but the really massive 50-ton red granite blocks, those had to be brought from Aswan, which is 800 kilometers away. They would wait for the Nile to flood and literally float these massive stones on giant wooden boats. Once they got them on land, tens of thousands of skilled laborers dragged the blocks on wooden sledges. By pouring a little water on the sand right in front of the sledge, they actually cut the friction in half. And finally, using sheer human muscle, they hauled those stones up massive mud and brick ramps. And just to put the scale of that into perspective for a second, Khufu's Great Pyramid is made up of over 2.3 million individual blocks of stone. 2.3 million. And it's not just the mind-boggling weight, it's the impossible precision. Think about doing this without a compass or satellites, yet the pyramid was perfectly aligned to true north. The base is so incredibly level that across its entire 13-acre footprint, there is barely an inch of variance. The stones are cut and fitted together so tightly that even today, you couldn't slip a razor blade between the joints. That kind of flawless geometry made huge waves in the ancient world. The math was literally legendary. In fact, when the ancient Greek philosopher Thales visited Egypt, he totally blew the locals' minds. He figured out the exact height of the Great Pyramid just by measuring its shadow. He simply waited for the precise moment of the day when his own shadow equaled his own height, used the properties of similar triangles, and calculated the impossible right there on the sand.
But, not everyone looks at the pyramids just as giant math and engineering puzzles. Take a look at this fascinating 1840 account from Daniel Defoe. It reveals a totally different perspective, detailing esoteric traditions which claimed the pyramids originally had flat tops. According to these traditions, divine magicians would climb all the way up there to observe the heavenly motions and carry out sacred conjurations. It really hints at a purpose that goes way, way beyond just a simple resting place for the dead.
And that brings us to this wild crossroads in our explainer. We've got two very different viewpoints here. On one side, standard Egyptology tells us the pyramid was this impregnable safe house for the pharaoh's mummy. It was built with ramps, sweat, and manual labor to make sure the king's soul safely reached the sun god, Ra. But on the flip side, esoteric traditions propose some incredibly different ideas. They claim the Great Pyramid was actually an initiation school. Some theories even suggest it acted as a planetary energy capacitor, or like a giant communication antenna. And get this, they claim the blocks weren't moved by manual labor at all, but by acoustic levitation, using rhythmical chanting to literally make the stones weightless. Adding a bit of fuel to those alternative theories is this mind-bending astronomical discovery from the 1980s. Scientists essentially overlaid a star map onto the Giza Plateau, and they found that the layout of the three main pyramids perfectly mirrors the three stars of Orion's belt. Even the varying sizes of the pyramids correspond to how bright those specific stars are. For the ancient Egyptians, Orion was the celestial home of Osiris, the god of the afterlife. So the builders basically created a flawless map of the heavens right there on Earth. It's that exact kind of impossible precision that leaves a lot of people to theorize about highly advanced ancient civilizations.
But honestly, here is where the mystery totally peaks. For thousands of years, the Great Pyramid was sealed incredibly tight. When modern explorers finally smashed their way through those heavy granite barriers and navigated the maze of passages inside, they reached the very heart of it, the King's Chamber. Made entirely of those 50-ton blocks of red granite, it was supposed to be the ultimate secure vault. But when they walked in, there was no mummy, no gold, not even a single hieroglyphic carved on the walls. It was just completely, eerily empty. So, did tomb robbers somehow clear out flawlessly? Or, as some thinkers suggest, was it never actually a tomb to begin with?
To try and find some answers, scientists started looking really closely at the architecture itself, specifically down in a lower room called the Queen's Chamber. Hidden inside there are two extremely mysterious shafts, and their defining feature? They are exactly 8 inches wide. They go deep, deep into the solid stone at these upward angles, but they are so unbelievably tiny that no human being could possibly ever fit inside to see where they lead. For years and years, it was just an impenetrable secret. Well, a secret until modern technology finally caught up. In 2015, an international team launched the Scan Pyramids project. This is so cool. They designed these tiny, specialized robotic cameras and sent them right up into those 8-inch wide shafts. The robot climbed roughly 200 feet into total, pitch darkness, until it was stopped dead. The path was entirely blocked by a polished stone door that had 2 weird metallic copper pins on it. Eventually, they managed to drill a tiny little hole through that door, slipped a camera in, and found a second hidden door. And if that wasn't thrilling enough, modern particle scanning recently detected a massive, completely unexplained hidden void right in the dead center of the pyramid. A colossal empty space where literally no human has set foot in 4,500 years. Which leaves us staring at one final, massive question to wrap things up today. What on earth lies behind that final door? What is hiding inside that giant, untouched void? Is it Khufu's true hidden burial chamber? Or is it some ancient repository of lost tech or esoteric wisdom? The Great Pyramid stands as this ultimate testament to human ingenuity. Whether it was built by sweat and ramps or by ancient advanced science, it remains the ultimate puzzle in stone. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning what you think you know.